of people have had these ideas about, rainbow currencies and things like that. But he's talking about taking this idea, down at the lowest level of computation. And so all these people who are trying to slapdash these solutions together on Bitcoin, and I suppose maybe not Ethereum, but they're doing it the hard way. They're reinventing the wheel. I think we're going to have it all right there. And I see Greg's mind starting to open up now around this idea of, wait a minute, we can go look at these things like currency and governance that we make these strong assumptions about, and we have these beliefs about the permanence of these things, but we're coming to find out that none of it's true. We could redo everything along the lines of these contracts, as profound and deep as governance and the whole idea of currencies and the whole idea of exchange. And so I swear he and Michael must have talked at one time.
And that's Michael Linton?
Michael Linton, yes.
Right.
Michael doesn't remember it, but I think Greg said he had a meeting with him at one time.
Yeah, I'm still looking forward to the day when I get to sit in on a discussion hosted or with Michael Linton to listen on what his views of what open money is. I was briefly looked at a few minutes of the last blockchain art video, and there was a fellow with a turquoise blue shirt with an accent. Was that Michael Linton by chance, or who was that person?
Yeah, he kind of has a British accent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was Michael Linton?
Yes.
Oh, damn! I missed it again. I mean, there must be some type of.
Yes, I know. I've noticed that myself. I keep thinking, I wish Steve was here, and it's been 2 times we've had him.
Yeah. Well. Now I'm motivated to. I'll have to. Well, this will be a good prep for me to. Oh, and by the way, welcome Mike to the session.
Hey, Mike.
Well.
Hey, how are you guys doing this morning?
Doing well. Yeah, so I'll have to watch the blockchain art video, kind of get oriented away his mind thinks and what some of the concepts are. So I'll be a little better prepared when I do get to sit in on a session. So good.
And one concept that I think we need to apply to Michael Linton's take on this that hasn't been brought up, but it's talked about all the time on Dig Life, is design from trust. See, that's this design from trust, and not design for trust, but design. You start your designs with an inherent belief in the goodness of the people that you're going to be associating with.
Okay.
Which is it's different, because everything we're talking about here in this crypto space is deals with, security and passwords and encryption and all that. So it takes a really different, slant to start thinking about designing things from trust. But I think that's kind of central to what Michael's up with.
Yeah. I got a quick question for Mike. Mike, is your Discord handle Loomis Meister by chance?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we had a brief exchange. So I don't. Just to mention, well, Mike, he watched our last DApp developer working group meeting, and he liked he appreciated the fact that we're the effort that we're making towards getting organized and the project management involved. But there was obviously, some of us, or me especially, I don't have a background with GitHub. So Mike said, hey, I'm willing to, help out as far as, helping you guys get oriented in this world of GitHub. So he offer. So he's going to be attending our Tuesday DApp developer working group. So I'll add that to the agenda. Mike, if you allow me, I'm going to just pull up the Discord here to kind of. And you said it very well as far as what were some of the items to kind of review. So bear with me here. I'll share my screen again. So let's see here. Okay, so okay, give a rundown on GitHub, the different lingo people use, best practices, incorporating it with tickets, features, issues, and dealing with bugs. Perfect, because I didn't realize until I think it was the dev team or someone mentioned that you can kind of there's a ticket monitoring in GitHub. So there's a lot of functionality there, and is just being made aware of what it can do. And then once we're made aware of it, we can dig a little bit deeper into some of the other features, but being able to leverage those. So I think that'll be helpful in the sense that we've got, and this is kind of speaking to the point of the sandbox that we're spinning up for the DApp developer working group. So when there's issues for the dev team and for the SR team, we're going to be opening, or I'm going to be the one opening up tickets in Jira for the SRE team. But sometimes, like what NutZipper said, it's nothing like with this. With the status.row app, there's an issue with the current library for gRPC. That's not something the SR team or RChain developers are going to work on. That's kind of on us, and opening up a ticket, having eyes look at that, and identifying who has the skill set to kind of research and maybe address that. Being able to do that in GitHub, in a central repository is going to be helpful in addressing some of those issues. So I'm starting to learn the value of GitHub and what it can be used for. So good.
Yeah, I was I found it interesting. I've been a part of a bunch of different projects as a project manager role, engineer role, or a team lead role, and it's you always depending on the scale of the project and how many people are involved, you have different strategies to approach all these problems. So I guess I just wanted to go over like a lot of the common words and lingo you'll see, so that when it comes time to sort of make your own decisions about your workflows and like what process you guys like want to use for this, that you'll be able to make that decision.
Point well taken. And it's kind of interesting. You talk about workflows and how do we processes and procedures. My background is in telecom support, so I have one way of doing things, but other people are going to have other ways of doing things, and just the way that I do it is just the way that I was kind of taught or learned. So, and it's certainly not necessarily the best. So, and it may be foreign to others. It just as others people's methodology may be foreign to me. But I think so. Just kind of bringing those discussions up, I think that's kind of the as we get kind of laying the groundwork and getting everyone kind of organized and on the same page, bringing up these workflows that you mentioned, and how we go about doing things, I think will be very, very helpful. So I look forward to those discussions as well. So, and I'll put that onto the agenda item. So that's something we can speak to kind of start those discussions. And
Yeah.
and I think go ahead, Gary. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. If you're not finished, go ahead.
No, I was. I'm just rambling.
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to say to Mike that I'm sort of like Steve when it comes to GitHub. I know what you can do with it. I just don't. It's like pulling teeth for me to do every step. I've probably cloned 3 repos successfully, and then started editing the code, and then I haven't quite made the last step of pulling my changes or pushing my changes. I don't know the terminology, but Jim and I were going to do that. But Jim knows all this stuff, but he's pulled so thin over 15 different projects that he's working on that I hate to pull him away from whatever he's doing. I just like to get involved with what he's doing at the time. So having more people around here that can help us with these GitHub problems would be fantastic. It sounds like you may be a little bit overpowered for this particular group, not Jim, but we do have others here who are probably at your level.
I think GitHub's being used more and more, even by non-technical groups.
Yeah.
For cooperation, and learning how to use it is important. And we have some practical issues. We need some basic coaching. And okay, we've made all these updates in Robot and in our chain API. Okay, now how do we merge all those changes back into the ArtChain community repo? Okay, we just don't know how to do that. I mean, we can certainly Google it and fumble, but having someone who knows how to do it and can coach is always a good thing. And in the past, I guess Dan was helpful to us in that regard. But we don't really have anybody right now who's regularly available in work studies to to help us do the basic mechanics of Git.
Mike, the last session we were on. You're a friend of Jay's, aren't you? Jay Butera.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
We live in Austin together and run into each other at these blockchain meetups.
Gotcha. And the last video or a meeting where we met, was that your first sort of foray or first introduction into our Colab ArtChain world?
Yeah, that was the first time I've ever heard of ArtChain. Even having worked on blockchain technology and trying to learn as much as I could about different cryptocurrencies, the world is so large that I hadn't even heard of ArtChain yet. And it's like that with all of these, when there's this amount of different people working on different aspects of it, I think it's impossible to know everything. So, but I have looked into ArtChain more since then. Like seeing the different dApps that you guys are working on, and I looked up into Rolang more with the tutorials that Joshi has on his GitHub page. So now I'm a lot more familiar with what's actually going on and what you guys are actually working on.
Well, good. And that was actually kind of leading into my next question as far as what it's so I started found out about our chain about summer of last year and became a co-op member at the end of September. So, I've been on this journey of discovery. So I was curious of how your journey is going, and as far as so you have the Rolang, and then there's the underlying row calculus, and you get into all of the mathematics. And I was just wondering if you've had a chance to if you've come across any of those videos and presentations, or do you have an interest in some of the underlying mathematics to it all?
You know, I like learning new things, so I have been looking at these different, you know, there's sort of a category of people out there who are very interested in not just not just functional programming like Haskell or Lisp or whatever, but what I consider to be like extremely esoteric mathematical, um, very high level complex descriptions of this stuff. And that's what I kind of consider Rolang to be. So I'm interested, but I'm also hesitant or reluctant to sort of really be enthralled by the ideas. Um, it just for me, I just like to be familiar with like new concepts that I don't really understand.
Mhm.
Um, but I'm still, yeah, I'm like not like super excited uh about it.
Okay. Yeah, and I appreciate that, and it's although I've taken a lot of math in school, it's certainly not my strong point. But what I find is um, there was someone made a comment a long time ago that with regard to Rolang, that Rolang is simple but not easy, and and I find when I sit in on these sessions, trying to learn Rolang, um, what seems to be helpful is getting an appreciation for the underlying mathematics, the row calculus. So that I think is kind of helping me. See, I'm not a developer. I don't have the background of being able to rely on a programming language that I've been using for several years. So I'm kind of starting at the very basics. So my vantage point is different from maybe others who are more seasoned at development. But as far as the ArtChain platform, when you go onto YouTube, I mean, there's all sorts of there's so many components of the ArtChain platform that every time I turn around, there's something new to kind of learn and understand. So and that's what's been kind of amazing to me is the depth and the breadth of how much uh, thought and information there is that went into this. So yeah, so it's yeah, so if for someone who's interested in new ideas and learning new things, there's I found it seems to be never ending at least. At some point it'll stop. I'll start to feel like I've kind of got a hold on it, but I don't think I'm there yet. And plus with Greg Meredith, he's always kind of he's the researcher in chief at ArtChain, so he's been thinking about all this for 30 years. He's a mathematician who's has early on has had an interest in computational calculus. The making computers compute more efficiently. Um, than they have been for the past 30 years. So he's been thinking about this for quite some time, and what he plans on proposing with category theory, Levere theory, and something called logic by oh boy, the ladle algorithm, logic as a distributed law. So here right now we're just trying to get to Mercury, which is just getting the platform up and running, but that's just the beginning. And the real, as Greg Meredith says, the real rocket science is going to be coming after that, towards the launch to Venus, and that's where you have these behavioral types, the ladle algorithms, all of these things that will allow the safety and the security of the system. So because when you're doing visa level transactions, 40,000 transactions per second, you can't have things going wrong, and you'll have this element of correct by construction. So whenever a smart contract is created, there won't be a human reviewing the code, making sure that everything is correct. Everything will be beyond that. It'll have to be, when someone's creating a smart contract, in order for it to work correctly, it has to abide by the behavioral types. And if it doesn't, then that person won't be able to create the smart contract. So all that kind of speaks to that. Hey, even what you've found so far, although it may be very interesting, there's even more to come, so it makes this project very, very interesting.
Yeah, and for me, it's like a lot of these new ideas are useful, even like just hearing about the way Rolang is focusing so much on concurrency, like from the get-go.
Right.
It subconsciously influences the way that I interpret everything else, like if and I think that's kind of what happens with good ideas. If it's like really if you're getting at some sort of ultimate truth or something that's ultimately useful, then you kind of converge across the entire ecosystem. You converge on those good ideas.
Sure.
And we see that a lot in software development with tons of different strategies and patterns, and so just that's what I really appreciate about this type of thing, is like I don't really consensus to me, the way I've been thinking about it is kind of you have there's a whole category of algorithms out there which don't have anything to do with it's purely it's as if the consensus algorithms don't know what they're agreeing on. It's just arbitrary data, and that's how stuff like Raft and Hot Stuff, there's a bunch of algorithms out there like that. And then you have a whole category of consensus algorithms which involve some kind of application logic or like a higher order language like Golang, and that kind of feeds back into the system and creates like an additional layer that affects how they agree on things. So I'm still at like this phase where I'm not sure like which really is gonna like what's the winning idea here, like for Ethereum and even Bitcoin, the way it stores like kind of like a smart contracts thing with its transactions, I'm not even sure that if I was going to make a cryptocurrency that I would even go in that direction. But but other people are way more excited about smart contract technology than I am. So I'm just kind of learning about it here and there.
Cool.
Yeah. Currently, I've been trying to implement different consensus algorithms myself, just to have it available in a library form for people.
Okay.
But yeah, I'm just touching the ones that don't involve like actually any smart contract technology yet. Although I do think it would be interesting, I've been playing with the idea in my head of just trying to make a Erlang interpreter of my own just to see where that went.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't seem like it would be like you said earlier, Erlang is a very simple language, by design. So I don't know how hard of a task that would be, but that's what I've been thinking about lately.
What language would you use for your interpreter?
Right now, I'm mostly comfortable with C++.
Wow.
So that's where I would naturally want to do it. But yeah, I learned C and Java in college. That's what they just teach you as a basic type introductory to programming. And then when I first started working, I just jumped straight into embedded C++ development.
Yeah, that's what I did back in the 80s, but it was with C. There was no C++ then. Yes, but I know where you're coming from. Good. Thanks. Keep going.
Yeah, and I was developing firmware, and then I got into Python and JavaScript to just as a more higher level thing. It was easier to do than a lot of this firmware crap where you're dealing with registers and you have to read 100-page manuals to get you're dealing with bare metal in those cases, and you have to interface with these extremely low level bitwise driver type nonsense. So we would do a lot of the testing code with either like web server type level stuff with JavaScript, or just running testing scripts with Python. But now personally, I kind of gravitate towards C for a lot of this, or C++ for a lot of this stuff, because it's, to me, I can do a lot of the high level stuff that I could do in Python just as easy as C++ now. And then I think I'm also going to get pretty. I think I'm going to like Rust for a lot of the same reasons that I like C++. I just haven't done it yet. But I don't know if.
I'm just a recent convert to type safety myself, and I'm surprised you haven't made that switch yet. I mean, I see you're headed that way, going to Rust, but
yeah,
that was one of my biggest complaints with C, was how dangerous it was. And let me put it this way, I wasn't a very good programmer either.
Yeah.
Yeah,
well,
I mean,
I was, I led a project where we had like 24 research assistants writing C code, and it was a nightmare. And so if I was going to be involved in any large development effort today, I would definitely not do it in C at all. I think it gets to your application gets to a certain complexity, and it's going to be broken. Period. But Rust would be is a dream language for I think writing for large software development efforts.
yeah, like one of the things that Rust, and this kind of ties back to like what I was saying with good ideas converging, like modern C++ is very similar to Rust. It doesn't have the borrow checker that Rust has to like really force you to be safe with your statement, like they've enforced at a compiler, like a static analysis level, to say you're just not allowed to do things that are not safe unless you really know what you're doing and you say, hey, I want to do some unsafe junk right now. And but in practice, what that meant for me was, okay, I see all these people, these really smart programmers jumping over to Rust for this type of thing, but there's nothing in practice that stops you from doing that exact thing with C, C++. And so a lot in my own code, I do the same thing where I very rarely give multiple objects mutable references to what I'm working on. You're constantly trying to do const correct stuff and just passing things with immutable state around if you have to. And doing Haskell like stuff where you're just trying to do it as pure function possible, like where you're minimizing state, and any type that you do create, you make it regular so that people can operate it on it as if it was some kind of fundamental type. So that's kind of my strategy right now with C++, even though like there's no static analysis tools that rise to the level of Rust. You can still do the same strategies if you're trying.
Even with JavaScript, I guess because of the introspection, they have environments that do enforce the same kind of security measures, like Jesse, Clojure. Which I guess is not JavaScript, but it's I can see how I think we talked about it in another meeting. Now, were you here last week? But at this time, you were at another thing where we talked about. See, so you got Joshy's introduction to the pi calculus and all that.
Yeah.
Good, yeah, it's good. So, and you know what you mean about things converging. The C++ world you were saying is coming to sort of the same type of paradigm as our chain in terms of channels sending and receiving information.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's what I hear from good modern C++ programmers. It's just that for my style of programming, I don't have the mental bandwidth to carry all those things that you have to carry around with you when you program like that. But I do know that modern programmers are much more enthusiastic about C++ than they were back in the 80s and 90s.
Yeah, before that 2011 release of C++, it was pretty much, it was like a hellscape of basically just C, like the old 1990 style C stuff where you're messing around with pointers, or you got memory leaks all over the place. That's just what. That's just. Yeah, that was the world you lived in, but it's getting a lot better. There's by doing things that are best practices, you kind of by default begin to do things in a much more sane, manageable way. That a lot of these other languages got to, like, I view a lot of these newer languages as you're like Rust was able to make a lot of changes very rapidly because C++ is constrained in how they can add features to the language because they have to maintain backwards compatibility. That's one of the promises that keeps millions of developers using it, and that's why a language like Rust can say, well, aha, we're gonna make a we're gonna change things at such a fundamental level that it's gonna make your program completely safe in this one way, and for a while it's actually superior to C++. But I think the strength of C++ is there's a committee involved which is very diligent in how it accepts features so that it doesn't just become something very bloated like Java, in the sense that they make some kind of very, very large sacrifice in performance or an overhead in some way, and then 10 years down the line it's unusable to someone. A lot of pretty much every feature that C++ accepts in a very slow way is something that is not it's zero cost if you're not actually using that feature. So I think maybe in 10 years C++ could catch up to Rust, and I don't think it's a bad thing that Rust came along and sort of kicked the committee in the ass on certain things like type safety. I think it's really good for C++ and programming in general. And that happens with all these languages. Like I think Rolang is the exact same way. Like if there is this tremendous value to be gained with this pattern where you're focusing on asynchronous operations and parallel concurrency right from the get-go, if there's really a truth behind that, then that's something that you'll see adopted in every other new language that comes out. So I think it's a very good sign that for Rolang, the fact that a lot of these other universes are converging on the same language is a really, like, that should be like a very confidence boosting thing, because that just means that you're on the right track and everyone else is just trying to catch up.
So I know, Jim, this is the hour for consensus. Did anyone have any thoughts on consensus this morning, or what are?
Well, I guess we started out talking about what was it? I guess we were talking about the currencies, rcast, and how casting a type is pretty much the same thing as converting wine to water, or water to wine.
Right.
And the latest rcast was involved the consensus of science. Okay, well, in the currency talk, Greg really was talking about how you end up with objective criteria, and I can't describe that well, but there's a common theme there, in that he was talking about consensus in science and mathematics,
Right. Yeah.
As you know, an objective consensus mechanism, um, and how governance can be the same type of thing. So you know, we've sort of got this common theme of currencies to
Hmm.
decisions, you know, to uh, governing a system,
Right.
um, and the idea of there being some objective measure. I don't know if there's anything, any other comments we want to make on that. Uh,
Jim, I don't know if maybe I'm the only one who hasn't watched the Rcast, the latest Rcast yet. Jim, have you watched the Rcast on the new topic of governance and consensus and governance? Sounded
yeah,
like, oh, okay, because you sounded like you knew what you were talking about there, so I was impressed. Because, you know, I just got a taste of it. I sit in on the Monday morning Casper stand up, and you know that's Greg just kind of um, talking about the research he's been doing for the previous week, but it's kind of setting it. He uses that time to kind of as a first dry run to go through what's going to be coming up on the RCast. So I always get like a preview of what's coming in a week on RCast. So, uh,
I
but
was
then I get behind
also,
on RCast, and I feel like I'm behind everybody. But what I wait for is the transcript to come out, because for me being able to listen to it and read it along the same time, I just absorb it so much better, and I can, if I need to go back and re-listen something, I can find it. So yeah.
yeah,
So
they have the transcript, so that's good.
right, the transcripts come out a few days
Yep, I know.
later.
Yeah,
Yeah, so those are,
so, yeah, they have the transcript of this already. I know the
yeah.
last one, I didn't see the transcript yet. I don't know if they posted
Yeah,
it.
it's out as well.
Okay, I'll have to go back and look at it.
Let's see here.
Um,
So, Mike, I just throwing out some things. Just I'm not just to see if you're aware of it. So with our DApp developer working group, just wanted to check to see, are you aware? You know, we're working on creating a sandbox, test net, for DApp developers to stress test and run their apps. Have you is that something? Well, I guess are you interested in eventually creating dApps to run on the RChain platform? Is that
Yeah, I mean, I don't have any specific like killer application idea. Um, but it's really easy to make these dApps, and if I can just try out some random idea I have, then I definitely would do that.
cool? And then so the SRE team is working on spinning up our sandbox testnet. So we'll have that in addition to the regular testnet. So that sandbox testnet will be more for the dApp developers to find new bugs and really uh, pound the network. So yeah, so we're working on that. Um,
I did see at the last video I watched, you guys talked about, I think, yeah, it was in the dApp developers meetup. You talked about like a trust wallet thing. So you were looking for someone who knew C++ to potentially.
When you said C++ earlier, and I was thinking back to that video, I'm like, somebody said they wanted to speak with someone at C++, and that was it. So thank you for bringing that up. So that was NutZipper, who's, a tremendous asset in his right. But yes, so as I understood it, Trust Wallet, and he had mentioned this before, going back several months. Trust Wallet is a project created by Binance. So the idea is if we could just do what we need on our end to add our chain to the Binance Trust Wallet, so then we would have this additional tool at our disposal for the transactions with Rocket and Rev. But the clincher is you have to know C++, and so so that'll be, so if you attend Tuesday, I should be taking notes now of things that I should add to the agenda. So maybe we can just have that as a topic of discussion as far as what we can do in that regard. So cool. So bear with, trying to find a decent pen. Man, okay. Not having any luck. It's like when you need something to write with, it's nowhere to be found. Okay, let's see here. So C++. Trust Wallet. Okay.
Yeah, I kind of, I'm not familiar with Trust Wallet, but if they've sort of designed this thing to let you plug in whatever type of blockchain app or whatever you have, so it should be pretty straightforward.
Cool. And
awesome.
yeah, Mike, do you have any familiarity, or have you been exposed at all to the Ethereum Solidity smart contracts by chance?
Yeah, I've followed their tutorials. I made a couple tokens on their test nets. But
cool. Yeah, one of the things, we have all sorts of ambitions, but one of them, apparently there's a host of games on the Ethereum platform written in Solidity. So the thought was to take those games and create the Rolang version of them and deploy those on our chain. So we're having a hard time hunting those down. There's a fellow by the name of Phil Straunch, and I've actually sent Phil a message. He apparently worked for Ethereum during the hardening effort. So he in some part was involved when creating these games, and he was the one who actually brought up the idea of using these games to test out and harden the ARC-Chain platform. So if you hear us talking about the Ethereum games, that's what we're referring to, and that would be a great way to if you have an example of a smart contract, be it a game or whatever, but developing the Rolang skills to be able to duplicate those, transfer those over from one language to the other. So that's something that I'm kind of looking at to help kind of sharpen my Rolang skills. I got a long way to go.
Yeah, it's a marathon type of thing, though. If you just if you spend some amount of time every day, it's unbelievable how much you'll have learned after a year when you look back on it.
Yeah.
And if you just try and binge and just learn everything in 24 hours, then you'll be disappointed because you'll crash and burn.
Yeah. So, and what my ambition is, there's all sorts of Rolang resources that are out there. One of our community members, his name is Joshi Orndorff, who was a computer science teacher in high school. So he's very versed in Rolang, and he has Rolang hours on Thursdays. And I mean, there's several months worth of this going back, to last year of Joshy's Rolang hours. And then there's other, there's snippets of code that are out there, but it's all kind of dispersed. So being able to kind of consolidate this wealth of resources into a central repository. The Excuse me, guys, for a second. Hold that thought. I got a phone call I got to take real quick. I'll be back in a second.
So while
Yeah,
I
I
got
kind of.
you, while I got,
I
go
No,
ahead, Mike.
go ahead. You're good. Good.
I was going to say, while I got you here, I got a robot. I just made a release back to my own repository, and I want to update I want to make a pull request now to the RChain community repository. So I have to do. I don't know if you know offhand what the commands would be to do here.
Well, so if you want to do a pull request, there has to be a library on or a repository on GitHub that has this this like it is tracking this repository.
Right.
So did you clone or fork this originally from an RChain?
I believe so.
So you would go to that on GitHub.
Um, so I would go to robot here.
Right. And then in the pull requests tab, you can make a new pull request on the right. And then so with the forking, if you click on the where it says compare master, the drop down, I'm not sure if it shows like forks, but where it says, because your base branches, you want it to be master because that's where you're wanting to merge it into. Let me see about
it says also compare across forks.
Yes, that's what you want to do. So
if I click on that, then now
there you go.
Now I get RChain community. Now,
And then you want to for the
which one do I want to?
So the base,
select.
You want to leave the
server here.
No, you want to leave the base to be RChain, and you want to have the one on the right be yours.
Okay. There isn't anything to compare. What is this?
Okay, so go back to your command line where you were looking at your git status stuff. So if you do just type git space status. Okay, so you pushed your updates. Let me go look on GitHub.
So why is this base and that's head?
Well, the base is going to be merging your changes into. And the fact that it doesn't see any changes is saying that it thinks they're at the same version already.
Which is crazy, right?
Well, that's why I'm going to go look at to see what it looks like.
So, this is all old stuff. 9 months ago.
Yeah. And then the forks. Whoops. I accidentally created my own fork just now. So your master branch is very far ahead. At the top there, you can see it's 44 commits ahead. There's actually a pull request button there. You can see it on the right. Oh, okay. Okay, no. So the message is there isn't anything to compare because they are entirely different commit histories. What does that mean? I wonder how that's possible. Because
one's a fork of the other.
Right. I'm just going to look at the network graph. So it looks like, so looking at, if you click on Insights up at the top, there's a tab in GitHub called Insight. And you can then click on the network tab, and then you can see like a visualized representation of the branches. If you up at the top on the, they break the pages out into tabs. One of them's Insights. Oh, I can share my screen also if that would help.
Sure.
Well, I said that, but how do you actually? Oh, there it goes. Can you see?
Yeah.
So this is GitHub's little network view. So this is why it doesn't automatically isn't able to like just create a pull request, because at some point it's not directly forked somehow. I don't know how it's possible that it's a fork, that it didn't actually fork. But to kind of fix this problem, I don't know if a pull request is going to work, because it kind of it's a pull request is on GitHub's side. It's basically a way to permission people merging stuff into your code. So if you have any conflicts, like if two people edited the same file and you try and merge those two branches, then Git itself will fail because there's a merge conflict. But a pull request will fail and also not be able to resolve because there's no automated way for it to resolve conflicts like that. So you have to go in and manually update it. But in this case, because it doesn't even have merge, it's like this is a different type of problem. What I would say is you should go to the RChain community page and then sort of create a branch and then manually merge in your other code, and then do a pull request from that branch. So
What if I just delete that whole repository and then recreate it or something?
yeah, I think you could do that. If you want to just yeah, I think another like, so if you were going to do that, I think it'd be pretty easy to just check out the RChain community uh stuff, replace, like, just copy paste your entire project that you have in this one into that, and then just push that to master. That's another way you could do it, like, with no hassle. um but generally speaking, if you want to, the pull requests are very nice because it if everything's going nicely, then as a maintainer of the projects, you don't have to really worry about weird stuff like this happening.
Now,
Um,
can I just do a push to it directly from?
so it depends on the settings of RChain Community's repository, but it probably by default would allow you to just to go. You can check out its master branch and then push directly to master. If not, then you can just create a branch off of master right there, change all the code, and then just merge that into master with a pull request. Um,
Um,
so in the code, like, if I was doing this, I would just check out. I would clone RChain Community, and then just, like, copy paste all my entire folder structure from your thing, and then just update it, but with a push into master on the RChain Community site, just to keep it updated, because something weird happened. I don't know how you were able to get this repository without like, why it recognizes it's a fork when it's not.
Obviously, I didn't know what I was doing.
Yeah,
Whatever I did was wrong.
yeah, and that's kind of how Git works. You can do crazy things with force pushing and checking out and messing with the heads. And
But what I had originally, I did a checkout of the RChain community, but I couldn't push it back because I wasn't at that point, I wasn't an owner in the RChain community. So
okay.
So then I had to I pushed it back to my own. And I had two origins.
Yeah.
I couldn't push back to the original origin, or can I? I mean, I can add an origin, right?
Yeah, but
It'll die.
it's when you're manually sort of changing the origin, like whatever the remote is tracking, or doing, like, a force push or anything kind of wonky like that, is kind of asking for trouble, because you'll run into issues like this where the server isn't really able to sort of see through what you were trying to do, and it just kind of breaks down. But if I was gonna personally make changes to the RChain, to that repo right now, what I would do is, when I clone it, and I'll just clone it right now. Because I'm not going to have permission to push either,
But we
Um,
can
so-
add you.
Yeah, well, I'll just, like, show you from my standpoint what I would do. So now I've cloned it, and it's brought me up to date with master. and I'm just going to assume that I can't push to it, but I'll just change something.
Well, can you fetch mine right over this?
Yeah, I probably could. Yeah, I'll just pull clone yours.
You want to fetch it, right? Not clone it? I don't know.
No, so if you fetching in GitHub language is it's saying I want to you're just asking the remote server if there's any changes on the remote that you don't have on your local machine.
I'm thinking of like a get without
or like a more hard version of fetch would be pulling, where you're not just asking for if there are changes, but you're actually saying, give me those changes and apply them to my local branch. Remember how to rename files with command line. So you just open up both of these. So you've got kind of like, this is like the most updated version on the Relaying community website.
right. That the one on the community website is old, right?
Right. So just looking at the, like, you've added all these files, right? So like what I'm going to do to just kind of resolve this quickly is take everything that you did and just copy paste it over. Like, I wouldn't do this going forward because, this is kind of just to fix that issue where it's not actually tracking it as a real fork. So now you can see like there's all these unstaged changes and modifications to it. And then I'll just try, like, so pushing for me should be similar. Like it probably won't have, I probably don't have permission, and we'll see. So you do a get status, and you can see there's all these untracked, unstaged changes. I'm just gonna do this manually because, yeah, and we can go over some of this stuff on Tuesday, but I'm
can interrupt is so making a PR with all the changes from Gene repo into the Airtrain community repo wouldn't solve the problem.
Sorry, what was? Can you
So
explain?
if you make a pull request from the repository that Gene has into the I can make such a pull request probably. Let me check. Oh, I can't.
Right. Yeah. So if you look at the network graph for it, it's kind of, it says it's a fork, but it didn't actually branch. It didn't actually fork for some reason. So
No,
That's why we're just manually updating it.
yeah, thanks.
So should I add you to the repo?
No.
You can make a pull request.
So let me just get through doing this. It's been a while since I did it manually. So what I'm now going to try and do is not to push it straight to master. But now I've staged all these I've staged all these sort of changes to a different branch, and then we'll just do a pull request like you would do normally, like that would work. And I don't know if I remember my password and stuff. Yeah, I can't even do it to a non-master branch. Um, hmm. I guess it. I mean, it would work if you tried to do it. I was trying to do this in a way that like I wouldn't need access to push to the RChain community site. But maybe that's not possible.
I'm thinking though that it might be better to do it the other way, since all the history is in the Jim Scarver branch.
Yeah, if you want to just sort of.
We could just delete this, right? This robot directory.
You could do that. You could also. You could probably do some kind of rebase or something, but that's kind of what I was saying. Like, once you get into this situation where you are doing this type of thing, you're gonna have to impose your will upon GitHub here, in some way. If you delete the repository and then just treat yours as the original, that's fine. I think that should work if you just fork it again back into the original repo from yours.
Right. Of course, I don't know how to delete it.
Yeah, I mean, that's basically what's holding me back from doing anything to that community's repo. Like, I don't have permission either to do anything, but that's what you'll need.
Permission, I just don't know how.
So if you want to delete the remote thing on the RChain site, then you'll have to just go into the GitHub settings itself. You won't be able to do it from your machine. You'll go here, there'll be a settings tab, and there's going to be, maybe I can show you on one of my repos what it would look like. So you'll see a settings tab, and then if you scroll down on the options, there's a danger zone, and one of them is to delete the repository.
Danger zone. Okay. Delete this repository. There's no going back. Okay, I'm going to get rid of it. Please type in the name of this repository to confirm.
Admit, you know, make sure you're doing this on the right repository, and you don't actually accidentally delete something that you actually wanted to keep or something.
Right.
But yeah, you know, one of the things I would say, I guess, for now is, you know, you can make changes if you, you know, forking on GitHub isn't necessarily the way you have to go about it. Like if, you know, if you're working as a community, it's pretty easy to just work within the repos too. You know, if you have permission to make branches, like the way I have set up some of my projects is like the settings prevent people from directly pushing to certain branches. Well, not on this one, but so I would say disable force pushing on master would be a good idea. I don't know how to like branch matching pattern, but
Okay.
and then you would also, you'd want to do stuff like this, like making sure it passes your continuous integration tests. You know, stuff like this is a good idea for these branches, and then you can just have people make you know, branches within the actual repository itself. But you know, the fork in general should also work if you're using this tool to fork, which is probably the way you want to go. Like if I like, so I'll go to that fork I accidentally made, that robot. So you know, I accidentally made this, and oh, I see. You already deleted it.
I
So
already
yours,
deleted it. Yeah, I did.
yeah.
And now I'm trying to figure out how I should be able to fork. I should be able to fork the Jim Scarver version now, right?
Right. If you're,
Except it's going to want to put it in Jim Scarver. I don't know how I'm going to change that.
if you go to your community, like our chain, there's some kind of, there's going to be a mechanism to be able to put your repo, like a local repo, in the community's, you know, repo. But I can't show you what that would look like because I'm not a part of a community. But it's something you would have to do within the GitHub website.
Okay, so if I go to this repository, and I look at the forks here. Okay, so there's no. Would I like to fork it? I can fork this in the Archain community. It's letting me do it.
Yep, that's what you want to do.
Jim Scarver robot. Should only take a few seconds. Okay, I done it. I think.
Yeah.
Latest commit 30 minutes ago. That's right.
Yeah, so now, you know, if I want to make a change from this, what I can do is, as a developer, if I'm coming at this, I'll just show you what I would try and do. So I could either, probably what I would do is I would just clone this repository, and then with permission, I would, create my own branches, but I'll just fork it just to do it like that, like kind of like how you wanted to do it before. So this is like my own copy. This is my own fork, and I have it on my local machine. I'll open it up in code and then just change something randomly. Whoops, accidentally closed my screen share there. So let me just maximize this. All right. This. I think this is still that old version.
The one you checked out before?
Yeah, it must have like just kept that old version. Let me just try reforking it again.
Okay, so you forked it before I deleted it.
Yeah, I had it forked from that old version.
Hopefully we...
I want to fork it from this. I guess it might fork. So let's try that again. So now, don't know what happened there. So if I was going to make a pull request, like, so I'll just change index.row to add some, maybe I wanted to add a parameter here for some reason or whatever. I can update that change on my thing locally. So there's a modified file. You can either you can do all this in the command line, or you can do it if you have like some IDE tools. That's another option. Usually I kind of use my IDEs to do this type of thing because it's easy to, type these commands wrong or whatever. So I have my own little version of row. So we'll go back to the GitHub and see what mine looks like. I have sort of updated from here. And so if I was going to go back to here and try and do pull request, can select mine now, and it says they're able to be merged now, and it can see the line that my actual change happened. It's seeing that I've added this, and I can name this pull request, or I can add a description stuff, like sort of you want to tell people like what you did. And then I can the creating the pull request itself will trigger any automated tests if you have them set up, which I think that's something you guys talked about at that last meeting, like in terms of automatic testing and deployment strategies. You can make those integrate with pull requests themselves too. This doesn't have it yet, but it's something that we can talk about adding. And I don't have write access to that repository, so I wouldn't be able to commit to approve this. But and you don't want to approve this. This is just for a test. But this is why pull requests are good, because if I was, so what it does is allow you as a project maintainer to merge other people's code in a sensible way, without having to manually go in and try and do a git merge, like a manual pull request is just what merging is. And it's you don't normally want to ever do this in real projects, because you're just asking for conflicts. Someone else is going to see that you've sort of stomped on their wherever they're based their branch off of, and they're going to have to now pull in your changes and stuff. So that's the main purpose of pull requests, is to just allow someone who's maintaining the projects to look at it from a very high level and then approve and comment on things as they come in.
Mike,
So assuming that we merged the pull request, now my GymScriber one would be out of date. How would I update my GymScriber
Right.
one?
So if you that's kind of why I would prefer as a developer to work within the repository that I'm planning on pull requesting. But the way you would update it is to you would kind of have to make your own, either you could do your own pull request to pull in the master branch from this, like the new changes into yours, in the same way that you pulled yours into theirs. You could pull theirs into yours to update it, or you could manually on your end do like what I was saying, where you just git merge. But that's, I wouldn't recommend that way. I would probably do it with a pull request. But even better than that is I would go into my repository that I'm working in, and I would just create like my own branch. Like I would, like assuming that this was the community one, I would just check out a new branch, name it something sensible. Like what I like to do is, if I'm working on a specific feature, I'll say that it's a feature, and I'll try and like a really short description of the feature, and then I'll make my changes. I'll change something, and then you do your commits in the exact same way that you would have. So now if we go and look at like the network graph, there's an actual branch within my network that has that new feature that was added. And then, pretend like my branch is what the communities would look like. Then you could just easily say, okay, well, I am going to make a pull request. Um, it'll show it for you too. It'll have it. You can go across repository or within the repository, and then you can just, do it the same way as before. And I'll just show you one of my other projects that I do have pull requests set up with continuous integration. So this is just going back in time, but it only let me merge this because it passed things. Here, I'll show you another one because I also use GitHub, or I use Bitbucket for one of my other projects, which is a Bitbucket is Atlassian. The same people who make Jira also make, or they own Bitbucket, and they, it does the exact same thing as GitHub, and it has the same sort of structure with pipelines and stuff. So, just going back in history, I can see like, oh, it's the exact same language. So that's another nice thing about GitHub, where you can see, you have the same sort of integration tests and potential deployment strategies and pull requests and branches and commits. So they all work the same, and it's just kind of, you just kind of have to become familiar with the language, I think. But yeah, when you run into specific issues like you did with the robot thing, you kind of just have to deal with it with a manual fix, kind of like what you did. So that's understandable.
Yeah.
Do you have any other community things that you were thinking about adding? Maybe
Well, I mean, we want to add. I think what Joshy's nth caller game is used as an example from our site, and that's in his personal GitHub. So since that's officially an example that the co-op uses, we should probably put that in the community.
Which one was that?
Nth caller game.
You said that was in Joshi Orndorff's repository? Yeah. So it's Joshi, Joshy, Orndorff, Orndorff. There we go.
Oh, I actually have his other thing here. Nth caller game. So this is one that doesn't exist yet in your community site. Right. So you would just do it the same. You would just fork it like you forked the other one into the communities like you did before.
Okay, that's easy.
And that'll maintain like these these branch connections that'll allow it to be like work with pull requests and things.
And then we can change the reference so that when, our website, so that the Archain co-op website points to our own version of it rather than Joshy's version of it.
Right.
This doesn't really matter. I mean, Joshy's, also an owner in the Archain community GitHub, but he's just not very active. So, if we want to put a patch in or something, we want to be able to do it. And we want to have access to it. Right?
Yeah.
And they probably should be brought up to date also. It's kind of old, maybe outdated a little bit. We certainly can't depend on Josh to do it at this point.
Yeah.
I got a quick question. Josh, you had an app status.row that I forked, but I forked it accidentally, and then I went and asked him, Joshy, can I fork status.row? He said, sure. Let me add the licensing. So we added a specific licensing to status.row. And where would I go to find, or where do you put this the license information or where would you find that?
So he probably, is this the right repo Archain status?
Yeah. Yeah, that must be it.
Usually, people will have their, like, if he's updating the license recently.
Okay.
Yeah, so 3 days ago he added this license file, which just describes like how, like, the license for this, like, software in this repository.
Okay.
So because he did this after you forked it, you don't have those changes on your version.
Okay.
So what you would do is go to your version. Are you talking about the fork in the Archain community?
Yes. So I forked it into the Archain community.
So if you go to this Archain community site, you can go to the pull request tab.
Okay.
You can also see right here, it's kind of highlighted it. This branch is one commit behind Joshy's master.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
You can then click on the pull request
Okay.
here, and it will kind of it'll do that same thing with the
Gotcha.
thing, and then you have to. Now this is kind of backwards because you want to merge his changes into yours.
Okay. So I got to make sure I'm going the right way. So his
Right.
changes into mine. Okay.
And you can kind of, this arrow sort of describes it's,
Yeah.
this side goes into that side.
Okay. Yeah. Now I know I was going to go down into the danger zone and delete it and start from scratch, but knowing that that's not the way to do it is to do a pull request. This is very helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, and it's nice because when he just made a simple change like this, where he's added a file and there's no conflicts,
Mm-hmm.
then it has a green check. It can be automatically merged. You can create a pull request, and then you'll be able to approve it, and it's very simple.
Okay.
And so this is the preferred way for adding changes from Joshy's into the communities.
And what a good first example. If I'm teaching someone else how to use GitHub, starting off with the README file, and making a little change to the license, and going through this exercise. It's safe. I don't have to worry about messing anything up. So this was a good first use case. Oh, excuse me for a second.
Yep.
So I just forked the nth caller game But probably the same thing. We would want to put the license in there, right?
Yeah, it's in general, you want to have, like, for any public thing, you want to have a README is really good, because that's what GitHub will break down here and show everyone. And then you want to have your license, because if you want to tell people, even if it's completely open source, if you want to put like an MIT license on it, it's good to have it in there just to let people know that it's totally fine for them to use the code, or and to follow whatever, you know, licensing stuff you intended. And actually, you know, GitHub has cool features. Like, so if I went to go make a new repository now, they have now, you can initialize, like, instead of starting from complete scratch with GitHub now, you can automatically add licenses. And like, so if I add an MIT license to this test repository, it's going to do what Joshi did, where it'll just put that license file in. And so, you know, that's something that they've completely automated.
Sweet. I like it.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, you know, now GitHub is not as big of a mystery as it was before. Just a little bit of overview helps just getting me oriented. And, you know, I'm kind of at fault for my own ignorance, because I haven't gone in and done any of the, you know, the help desk files, or just learning about GitHub. I need to do that. But, you know, so this was very helpful. And so as a community, you know, we're going to kind of spread the word around.
Thank you much. It was definitely helpful. I just merged the, I just made the pull request into our chain status app, and I guess we want to add the license file too, right? To the other one. That's funny, because I don't see the license file.
In his, it was so you haven't made that pull request. Yeah, I think I can probably just.
I did make the pull request.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I see it now. Okay, so
what did I do? I pulled it into a branch.
So the pull request won't, you know, happen until you, in the pull request tab, you, with write access, you can say, okay, accept this pull request and close the branch. It's not going to let me do it here, but you, since you have write permissions on the RChain community, you'll be able to say, like, I can comment on it. I can leave comments as a reviewer or something.
I thought
but I
already did a merge.
No,
Maybe
I'm looking.
Maybe I didn't confirm the merge or something. Now I merged it. Okay.
Yeah, so now it's closed.
I had done it.
Yeah. So now it's merged, and you can see the license files in the actual communities thing.
Okay. Good. I think we're getting somewhere. Go ahead.
It's a two-step thing. You know, you want to, as a developer, you want to create pull requests, and as a project maintainer, you want to be reviewing and approving them, so to actually finalize them to happen.
So blockchain community.
And it looks like this person has changes that they've branched off, and if they wanted to update the community site, that's what they could do. They could go to the pull request tab and just pull in from their fork, you know, whatever changes that they have.
So we could go and look at their changes, right? Decide if we wanted them.
Yeah.
But they have to initiate the pull request in order for us to see the changes. Or no, wait.
Well,
Okay.
really, anyone can create the pull request.
Okay.
As long as they have, like, you know.
Gotcha. So so there's a fork of our chain status into somebody's repository. They make a change, and no pull request needs to be created in order for anyone who has the fork to see what those changes are. Something like that.
Yeah, you kind of, you know, it's really easy to see changes if it's in a pull request already, because GitHub will break everything down into these files changed view where you can see line by line, and you can even peer reviews.
So let me ask you this. So the DCKC, that's Dan Conley, another community member, super great developer. So he has changes in his fork that Joshi doesn't have. So if he were to submit a pull request with those changes, so we would be able to see, you know, line by line what those changes are in the community, Archain community, and then chances are he's updated this app to improving it. So we would want those changes. So I guess what I would need to do is send him a message, say, okay, Dan, if you could, we'd like to get those changes on the Archain status app. Can you submit a pull request on that so we can bring those over? Is that kind of the workflow of how this would go?
Yeah, that's how it would work.
Well, we could do a pull request ourselves. We wouldn't need Dan to do it.
But okay, so let me ask you this: Dan has, Dan has changes in his repository. So if we initiate a pull request, it's requesting from all forks that are out there. Is that correct?
No, you have to. So when you're creating the pull request, here, like I'm saying, I want to
specify. Okay, I see that.
This is where I'm going, and this is where I'm coming from.
Gotcha.
And it will, you know, it'll look at what it can do with that and try and automatically resolve changes.
Okay, so here we go. We can make that specific pull request to DCKC, and then we'll be able to review what changes there are, and then we decide. And just for information, so DCKC, so that's Dan Conley, he has office hours Saturday mornings. It's Saturday mornings at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, or I guess it would be Central, 9 a.m. Central Time on this channel, on this Zoom channel. And Dan is a fountain of information. He's been a developer for forever. So he exposes us to a lot of, you know, valuable stuff. So this is something, you know, we can discuss tomorrow about what his changes to Archain status, what his changes do. Kind of have that discussion, and then we can go through the exercise of pull requests, bringing them over, and so forth. So now we're kind of taking what we're learning and applying it to working with other people who have forks and
Right.
bringing over code. So now we'll be able to put it into action tomorrow morning. So, and you're invited if you're available.
Yeah, I'll try and show up tomorrow, 10 o'clock. Sounds good.
Yeah. So that's another meeting that's on the Zoom, on the Colab calendar. And you, Mike, you have a copy of the Colab calendar, don't you?
Yeah, it's somewhere
Okay.
pinned on here. I remember looking at it one time.
Okay.
Here.
There we go. Yeah.
So, yeah. I definitely like, there's a lot that you can do work and like in terms of workflow with, project, it's endless what the amount of overhead you could add in terms of, like you could do it kind of like how this is, where everyone just works on their own thing, and then you say, hey, can you make this pull request? I've made a change like that. That's pretty typical of a lot of open source projects, where people will just see something interesting and just work on it, and then try and bring back their changes just to improve the original one.
Okay.
And then some organizations are very rigid in that they have sprints and tasks, and every new feature that someone works on is its own branch. That like something like Google, where they have their entire code base and ecosystem all stored in a single monolithic Git repository.
Okay.
Um, and Microsoft does something similar with Git, but there's no right way, really. There's best practices and general guidelines that I can go through, and then it's kind of up to you guys how, if what strategies you want to take with it.
Right. So, well, good. Just being exposed to the operations of GitHub, and then these workflows. Now we've got something to relate it to, as far as. So I imagine where we're at right now, as far as we're just a loose knit community, kind of that more relaxed. Just talking one on one. Say, hey, can you I made an update. Can you do a pull request? Kind of start from there, but hey, that's not to say that as we get more sophisticated and more structured, things start moving, then we'll kind of maybe move up to that next level. So this is all good. That's probably the Pacific time. Jim, don't you have like a calendar for Eastern, Central, Mountain, and anyways, there's multiple versions of the calendar depending on your time zone.
Yeah.
If you import the calendar, you'll get it in your own time zone.
So, okay. So I didn't realize it worked that way.
I haven't figured out how you can get the web version to show a person's local time zone.
Yeah, I'm always cautious because I was operating off of a central time zone calendar for a few months, until I realized I needed to get the east, that there was an Eastern time zone available. So yeah.
Yeah.
There, that's looked, 10 a.m. Okay. Or not 10 a.m., 9 a.m. 9 a.m.
Yeah, I'm in Central Time, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna take this for a minute. I just wanted to show this pull request here, Okay, this is Dan's version of our chain status, and this is the version we have. Now,
So that would be saying to bring the RChain community's updates into his repository.
really?
Yeah, you want
Yeah.
the arrow to go the other way. So the first box should be Dan's. We want to go from Dan's into the. Well, I'm going to let Mike take over. Go ahead, Mike. Sorry.
Yeah. So the one on the left is where you're bringing changes into, and the one on the right is the one is where the changes are that you want to bring in.
Gotcha.
Okay, so this is over here. So Josh's is more up to date. I thought.
Well, so what this is showing is that the master branch on the communities RChain is ahead of the master that
on Dan's.
that Dan has.
Okay, very good. And then the last.
And he has other branches that he could merge because he's not behind. So if you there's the repository, and then to the right of that box is the actual branch. So you could select, if he was working on a specific feature, not in his master branch, but in some other branch. And I can explain like the naming some other time where it's branches versus commits and repos
And maybe we can pick up on that on Tuesday, because what's the difference between operating in the master branch as opposed to another branch? That'll be, I'm sure that's a topic in itself, but that would be
right.
Good to know. Good.
Yeah, I think Dan advocates creating branches often.
Okay.
For everything you work on, you create a branch.
Well, I'm going to pick his brain tomorrow.
Then I get confused.
Yeah. Cool. Hey, this was very helpful.
Yeah, I can't find my calendar. Where is it here? It looks like we're missing the blockchain music, our song.
Yeah, I'm actually going to pop over there and see what's going on.
Yeah, it was nice talking to you guys. I'm going to head out too.
All right. Thanks,
see you later.
Yep.
Thanks, everybody.
Yep. Thanks, Gary. Have a great day.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
And Peter, it's good to see Peter. I don't know
Yeah, Peter was there.
if we